All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Huey, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Arthritis Foundation in the state of Florida. We're so happy that you've all taken time out of your day to join us. I hope that you've maybe grabbed a little bit of lunch and are settling in to learn a little bit more about the benefits of healthy nutrition for arthritis. We have a really great guest speaker with us today who I know you are going to find dynamic and interesting and really enjoy hearing from. So before we get started, I just wanted to share a little bit of background on kind of how and why we are offering this nutrition program today. The Arthritis Foundation has embarked on a journey of a patient-reported outcome study. It's called Live Yes Insights. And after our speaker presents today, we'll provide the information of how you can participate as well. But we started to see the data coming back and was showing, no surprise, that pain is really the #1 issue affecting our arthritis warriors. So we wanted to be able to present some information and education at a local level. In Florida, the data was showing, again, from our arthritis warriors who completed this online assessment, sharing their experience with arthritis. The data was showing that 92% reported daily interference in their activities due to pain. And we know, obviously, this is not okay. So we are presenting a pain management series this year here in Florida. And after we did some surveying of local arthritis warriors in our state, we found that nutrition was the #1 area of interest, the top topic that people wanted to learn more about anti-inflammatory diets and how that might be able to help reduce their pain. So that's kind of how we're here today, and that's really how the Arthritis Foundation works. We are powered by our volunteers and our arthritis warriors, and we are patient-led in making sure that all of our tools and resources that we are offering are what you need. So we'll share a little bit more about the end of the program about, again, how you can get involved in insights and other programs. But that's kind of what led us here today, and we're really excited to have our guest speaker, Jacqueline Reimer, here with us. Jacqueline is a national board certified health and wellness coach, and she's very passionate about serving individuals who seek wellness through nutrition and living a healthy lifestyle. So with that, I will turn it over to Jacqueline, and I hope everyone enjoys.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today. So who here is ready to feel their best and to learn about how food affects your pain? You know, there was so much I wanted to share today, and I just get so fired up about the change that comes with eating whole foods. You know, food is powerful, and every bite we eat is either moving us towards disease or away from it. And my desire is for you to walk away from this time together feeling empowered and clear on the change you can make starting now. So here's just a quick overview of what we'll spend our time on today. And while I recognize many of you are likely at work or living your busy lives, I do hope you'll be able to stay on and benefit from all that we have planned today. So we'll start with, what your pain management options are, and then move on to discuss the role that nutrition plays in reducing pain. And next, more specifically, discuss what you can practically do nutritionally. And from there, we'll talk about how to finish strong and the importance in that. And then we'll get into some fun food demonstrations at the end. And finally, wrap up with some frequently asked questions that had been submitted by you. So let's go ahead and jump on in with pain management options. So acute pain is a healthy way that our body and mind work together to protect us from harm. For example, the involuntary reaction of pulling your hand away from a hot stove. But when symptoms of pain don't go away, that's that chronic pain that many of you may be familiar with right now, and that can really take over your life if unmanaged. So thankfully, we now understand and know that there's so much we can do to reduce that pain. So let's talk about what we can do. And while this list is not extensive, there is much more to come on these topics in future series. But here are just a few pain management options according to the CDC before we take a deep dive into nutrition. The first one is to be active. And we know that moderate physical activity, a goal of 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day can help reduce symptoms of pain, swelling, fatigue, and depression, all associated with arthritis. And that moderate physical activity, those are things like those low activities like swimming and elliptical, walking, biking, and things like that. Next, there is maintaining a healthy weight. And managing a healthy weight does more than ease the physical weight load. It actually decreases the inflammation in your joints. So it's the inflammatory compounds coming out of the fat cells that are ending up in the joints, increasing oxidative stress, and that's causing damage to the cartilage. So the pain is an inflammatory problem. And this simply means that the pain you're experiencing is not inevitable, and there is something you can do about it. And as we know, maintaining a sustainable, healthy weight generally goes hand in hand with minding our food. So that leads us to nutrition, eating anti-inflammatory foods. And nutrition is a large piece of the puzzle when it comes to managing pain and leading a healthy lifestyle, because inflammation is the most basic problem of arthritis, and we know that our gut is often the birthplace of our inflammation. So eating anti-inflammatory foods is a great defense against your symptoms of pain. And I wanted to start by just sharing a few success stories on how making dietary changes can really change your life. I had a client with a very young daughter that had been battling the painful symptoms of arthritis. And the young girl strongly desired to move past her need for weekly shots. She had a vision for life without them. And she used that motivation to be open-minded to the new snacks and meals that her mom started to make as a result of our time together. And within a few short weeks, her symptoms started easing up, and she's now well on her way to a life without shots. So you personally may not be able to start quite as young, but you absolutely can start now, and it will make a difference. And then I had an example of an elderly family member and client of mine who had suffered from back pain for years, started mismanaging that pain with alcohol, and which we know in and of itself can cause an inflammatory response in our bodies. And in recent years, he had been prescribed medication repeatedly and declined, just stating that he felt like that was deadening his pain and not getting to the root of it, not resolving it. So he continued on from there to change his diet and focus on whole foods, prioritizing vegetables. And in his case, within just 10 short days, he was already feeling significant relief. And then lastly, this is just a story of a friend, a peer of mine. She had been on immunosuppressants for 14 years, from middle school all the way through college, which amounted to more than half of her life by the time she was able to come off of those. And by that point, her body had stopped responding to the immunosuppressant, which is common after a long period of time. And so she began pursuing dietary and lifestyle changes, and now 14 years of weekly injections are behind her. So what do all these stories have in common? The fact that diet and lifestyle allow these individuals to come off and stay off of medication. They got their lives back. And then lastly, that leads into the medication topic. So yes, medication can be helpful for a time, but we do know it isn't always the full answer. Medication is designed to block the inflammation process, while food, as I was just kind of talking about, food actually gets to the root cause of the inflammation, where it starts in the first place, and reduces and in some cases even resolves it. So while there may be a time and place for anti-inflammatory drugs, how would your symptoms and needs change if you incorporated an anti-inflammatory diet approach? So today we get to talk about reversing pain where it really starts, in the gut. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide and talk about the role that nutrition plays in reducing pain. So as I touched on earlier, inflammation is the most basic problem in all of arthritis, and the causes of inflammation are all around us. From the sugar we eat, to the high doses of wrong oils and fats in our diet, food allergies, lack of exercise, chronic stress, and so on. And all these things trigger a raging, unseen inflammation in our cells and tissue. Knowing that the gut is so much the source of where inflammation begins, it's only fair that we address nutrition in relation to pain management. So what exactly happens with food, the gut, and health? So diet influences the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome simply refers to the trillions of bacteria that naturally live along our digestive tract. And a gut microbiome's diversity and balance are influenced by what we eat. And the gut microbiome affects our overall health. And imbalance in that gut microbiome is associated with chronic inflammatory diseases, for example, arthritis. And the best way to maintain a healthy gut microbiome is to maintain a healthy diet. A dietary change can cause a temporary shift in the gut microbiome relatively quickly, but establishing a permanent shift involves consistency. And people who want to reduce arthritis symptoms are advised to make a long-term commitment to eating a healthy diet that emphasizes plant-based whole foods. So 1, diet influences the gut microbiome. 2, the gut microbiome affects overall health. And 3, the best way to maintain a healthy gut microbiome is to maintain a healthy diet. So now we'll look at, nutritionally, okay, what can you do now that we understand the way that pain influences, or excuse me, the way that inflammation influences our pain? What can we do about it? And how can we take ownership of that? So I definitely want to start by just saying I'll be providing a lot of information. This is information that I'll work with clients on for a minimum of 3 months. So you can breathe easy and know you're not meant to absorb all of this information today or make all these changes immediately. This is meant to serve as an overview as you start and continue to think differently about the powerful choices you have with food, because it really is a lifelong journey. And my goal here, kind of as I said earlier, is to leave you inspired and empowered to make just one simple next step. So if you have, a notepad next to you, just be thinking and paying attention to what jumps out at you and where you want to start. So a little bit of background, let's just briefly touch on what inflammation is, because we hear the word a lot. Chronic inflammation, you may have heard it compared to a fire inside of you, because the word inflammation literally traces back to the Latin for set a fire. In some cases, you feel heat, you feel pain, redness, swelling. And in other cases, it's not quite as obvious and you may not feel something. So when we eat inflammatory foods, our body produces more free radicals. And when our body cannot keep up with those free radicals, our cells change and are at risk for mutating and causing disease. Oxidative stress is the imbalance of free radicals and antioxidants. That's probably a word you're familiar with. And that imbalance is what leads to inflammation. This inflammation can lead to a ridiculous number of chronic conditions, from arthritis to heart disease and cancer, Alzheimer's, and so on. And in order to protect ourselves against damage, our bodies need anti-inflammatory foods to stop their free radicals from being produced and wreaking havoc on our cells. Finding a way to eat that reduces inflammation of the gut and subsequent systems of the body can lead to lessening of chronic inflammatory symptoms and diseases. And now that that's covered, what can we do? We can reduce inflammatory foods that trigger symptoms, we can eat whole foods, and we can prioritize quality with those foods. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide and talk about reducing inflammatory foods. So here you'll see a list of foods that are hurting our joints. Your body will thank you for reducing and replacing these trigger foods. Again, over time, it doesn't all have to happen at once. These are things like refined carbohydrates, saturated fats, trans fats, refined vegetable oils, and alcohol. So go ahead and move to the next slide. So refined carbs are known as simple carbs or processed carbs, and there are two main types. We have refined sugars and then refined grains. Refined sugars or processed sugars are those things like sucrose, so table sugar, and high fructose corn syrup. And just a quick note, while it is important to be mindful of your sugar intake, when reducing refined sugars, it's also important to understand that artificial sweeteners like aspartame are even worse than sugar itself. So just remembering that, for some, reducing sugar is best done quickly, and for others, it's better to slowly cut back, all the while finding that balance, kind of what I like to call living a little. So the focus is really on reducing refined sugars, not replacing it with artificial substances. And then, like I said, we have refined grains. These are grains that have been stripped of all nutrients, the bran, the fiber, and the other nutrients. These types of foods, unfortunately, have become a staple in the standard American diet. And those processed carbohydrates include foods like sugary snacks and drinks, the bleached white flour foods like white bread or pizza dough or pastas, pastries and donuts. There are also things like white rice or sweet desserts and snacks. And, they can really be even our salad dressings when we think we're doing well. Often our salad dressings have refined sugars and inflammatory oils, and, we'll get more into that in a little bit. But let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, and we'll talk about saturated fats. So there's several studies that have shown that saturated fats trigger inflammation. Saturated fats are found in animal products like you see here, especially in red meat, as well as processed meats like deli meat or bacon. They're also in things like mayonnaise or whipped cream and whole fat dairy products. And I did find it interesting that cheese is one of the biggest sources of saturated fats in the American diet, according to the National Cancer Institute. And we'll move on to trans fats. So these are your highly processed and packaged foods. Trans fats, these are found in many fast foods or fried foods. So think French fries, donuts, chicken strips, and then things, are baked goods like cakes and pie crusts and biscuits, packaged cookies and crackers. They're also in margarine. And there are hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated oils, if you've ever seen that word on a packaged product. So hydrogenated oils, unfortunately, fortunately, they are no longer generally recognized as safe in our food. Sorry. But when you're looking at a label, unfortunately, it's not always best to check that nutrition label part where it'll say 0 grams trans fat, or sometimes it's marketed real big on the front of the screen, or not screen, but box or package. And the reason for that is these products or trans fat can be 0.5 grams or less per serving and still be counted as 0 in a product. So really the best way for you to be empowered with these on a packaged food would be to look at the ingredient list and see, do you see any words that are hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated? That's kind of a red flag in your ingredient label. So then we'll move on to refined vegetable oils. And according to a study done in the Journal of Obesity, vegetable oils are high in omega-6 fatty acids, which are linked to an increase in sustained inflammation. And we know that we need more omega-3s, if you've ever heard me before, in our diet, and we need fewer inflammatory omega-6s. And the optimal ratio is really anywhere from a 1-to-1 ratio or a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. And the average American's consumption is 20-to-1 or even higher. So it's very skewed from where we need it to be. And refined vegetable oils fall into the saturated fat and trans fat categories, but I really did think it was worth pulling out as an individual to talk about. And some refined oils, not quite done with the refined oils, but some refined oils that are especially dangerous are the soybean oil and corn oil. And I want to give you those words just so you know what you're actually looking for. Because when you hear, okay, refined oils, what does that mean? What does that look like? How do I know to be aware? So again, those are like soybean oil and corn oil. Those are two of the most popular, I'd say. And then some others to watch out for in labels might be sunflower oil, safflower oil, peanut oil, vegetable oil. And there's a few more. So now we'll go ahead and quickly move on to alcohol. And excess alcohol, as we know, can cause inflammation. So it is best if eliminated or used in moderation. And water really is our best friend here. And then we'll move on to inflammatory ingredients. So we've talked about inflammatory foods a bit now and food categories. And I wanted to just share a list of ingredients. You may want to screenshot this and reference it later because marketing can be really sneaky. And you may be left wondering what ingredients you actually should be watching out for. So here are just some of those most common inflammatory ingredients that are likely found somewhere in your kitchen, all over the grocery shelves, that really aren't food products, and our body doesn't need them. And I do want to touch on high fructose corn syrup just briefly. It's been shown to create holes in the intestinal lining, if you've heard of leaky gut, which that just means it allows byproducts of toxic gut bacteria and partially digested food proteins to enter your bloodstream and trigger inflammation. And it's closely tied with weight gain. So two things that we know we're trying to be aware of to better our pain management strategies. And then, as you see, there's the hydrogenated oils, which are the trans fats, and that list goes on. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next screen. Oh, yes, this was just a label that I had found that I thought was really great because it kind of highlighted, all those things that we were just talking about. And this is a standard cracker ingredient list. So maybe have fun with it after this and hop off and go pull out a box of crackers or a packaged food that you have and see what words, you can find that maybe aren't those nourishing foods that we're trying to prioritize. Because there's always a better option. And, we'll keep talking about that actually in the next slide. We'll go ahead and move on to that one. So I found these slides, they're by just ingredients, and I thought they were just another great visual aid of how inflammatory ingredients sneak into our food. Because I don't just want to say a bunch of words, and if you're anything like me, you're visual, you want to see an example. So I threw these in here, and of course, fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, these are the most nourishing snack options, with their fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phytonutrients, and so on. And while they should be our go-to snacks, there are times where convenience is needed. You're in a hurry, and you need to feel, and you want to feel empowered to make a nourishing choice and choose something with whole food ingredients. So I just thought you might enjoy this slide, and then the next one. There's one for adults, and then one for kids, and one for on the go. So maybe something you want to screenshot if you find value in it. And then we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Eating whole foods. So whole food, high fiber, plant-based diets are inherently anti-inflammatory. And rather than focusing on how much bad we can get away with, what if we focused on the simple concept of eat nourishing foods, eat whole food? And what do I mean by whole food? I mean food that is not overly processed. So in other words, nothing bad has been added, nothing good has been taken away. And we talked at length about what ingredients to replace in your kitchen. So now we're going to make a hard shift and talk about what to prioritize in your day-to-day. With all this talk about reducing inflammation and inflammatory foods, it only makes sense to pursue an anti-inflammatory diet. And while there is no specific arthritis diet, evidence has shown that eating an anti-inflammatory diet, one consistent with the Mediterranean diet, for example, can relieve symptoms of arthritis. These are diets rich in antioxidants, omega-3s, and fiber. So we'll go ahead and move on and talk a little bit about antioxidants. So antioxidants are the veggies, fruits, herbs, spices, just think vibrant colored plants. Dr. Michael Greger says we should all be eating fruits and vegetables as if our lives depend on it, because they do. Dr. Mark Hyman says there's one major thing that all experts agree on: eat plenty of colorful vegetables. Think about eating the rainbow each and every day, and you'll be on the right path. All this talk about fruits and vegetables, well, they not only provide fiber and important micronutrients, but they can boost antioxidants, which, as we talked earlier, help to fight off those free radicals that lead to inflammation-based disease and corresponding symptoms. And like I said, antioxidants are found in plant foods. So the richer, the more vibrant the color, the more antioxidants the food has. So think leafy greens like kale and broccoli, sweet potatoes, your berries, your spices, like ginger and turmeric. And we really want to aim, maybe having the end goal of aiming for filling our plate 70% with vegetables, and at least starting with a minimum of 5 servings a day. So next we'll talk about omegas. And omega-3 fatty acids specifically, these are your fatty fish, nuts, and they have higher levels of omega-3s. Fatty fish and nuts have higher levels of omega-3s, and they help counterbalance the negative impacts of those omega-6s that we were talking about in reducing inflammation, and they also act as lubricant to your joints. So these foods are salmon or walnuts, chia seeds, raw and unrefined extra virgin olive oil, and omega-3s really do deserve a staple in our diets. And we'll move on to fiber. So fiber, a diet high in fiber is connected to healthier weight and a decrease in inflammation. Fibrous foods include plants and whole grains like oats and brown rice and quinoa and lentils. And I did want to point out, do you see the overlap in these last 3 photos? When you eat food, you get more than the omega-3 or the antioxidant or just the fiber. Often you'll get all 3 in one. And we'll go ahead and move to the next slide and talk about anti-inflammatory diet real quickly. So this is another infographic I found by the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Health that, again, you may enjoy, and maybe you want to screenshot that and reference it later. But it just summarizes what we're talking about so beautifully. And it even incorporated the other lifestyle components that are so valuable up there at the top, because it is, like I said at the beginning, it's more than nutrition. Nutrition's a big piece to the puzzle, but it is a whole lifestyle. It's that anti-inflammatory lifestyle. And we can go ahead and move on. So again, I won't spend much time here, but we often split hairs over calories and macros in efforts to pursue better health, but science really points to the value that quality plays in our food. And I wanted to touch on this just to save you frustration when grocery shopping. This can be a big topic, and I'll often go to the grocery store or conduct pantry makeovers with clients so we can be more hands-on for this. But before sending you out into a store with all these tips that I've been providing, and you find yourself bombarded by confusing labels, I just wanted to breeze through why quality matters and what to choose. So why does quality matter? When you take these guidelines and spend your hard-earned money on them, on these foods in efforts to give your body clean, nutritious food, don't you want the assurance of knowing that your money has been well spent, that you weren't fooled by marketing? When you prioritize quality, you can rest confidently knowing that you do not have the inflammatory, toxic chemicals on your food, that you're actually purchasing the nutrients that you're after. So take salmon, for example. Let's say by the end of this, you've decided you're going to add salmon into your diet regularly. And the truth is, not all salmon is created equal. What we want is that wild Alaskan salmon with that logo, as you'll see on the screen, that says MSC. And this will just tell you that your salmon has less saturated fat than farmed. It has less pesticides and antibiotics. It has no artificial coloring. It's rich in omega-3s. And after all, that's probably your biggest motivation for pursuing it. It's higher in minerals, calcium, iron, and so on. So again, briefly run through this. How do you choose quality in your foods? Well, okay, quality protein. These are, we want, for our seafood, we want wild caught. For other animal products, we want pasture raised or grass-fed products. And again, just a reminder, what does this guarantee? It guarantees that there's more nutrients, more of what you're looking for in it, and you're not essentially counteracting the good with the inflammatory chemicals or antibiotics that might be in these products or on these products. So then quality of fat, how overwhelming can it be when you're standing in an oil aisle and you see a sea of oil to choose from, and often we end up basing our decision on the price point because we aren't sure how to decide what is important. So just a quick note on that, choose unrefined, cold pressed oils, prioritizing olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, flaxseed oil, and even walnut oil. And trying to stay away from blends. That's where it can get really sneaky, is it can say olive oil, but it could be 70%, of an omega-6 inflammatory oil. And then quality of complex carbs. Carbs get a bad reputation, and we know that carbs are good and necessary for our bodies. And it's not that we don't need any carbs, it's that we need the right carbs. We need fruits and veggies. We need whole grains like oats, brown rice, black beans, quinoa. These are all great. And they're also great alternatives to animal protein that are generally higher in saturated fats. And then we'll move on to the next slide and just talk briefly about finishing strong. So everyone's different. How long it takes to see change depends on the severity of your symptoms and your commitment to change and how quickly that you're making changes. Your goal is, again, to adopt a lifelong healthy lifestyle. And when you do this, you'll see the corresponding changes. What you eat every day is an investment in the quality of your life. So here are a few tips to achieving sustainable change. Number one, take it one step at a time. 2, set written goals with a time limit. Break them down into weekly or daily goals and activities. 3 is to focus on what's going well, and don't let a slip up in your journey be the end of your journey. Celebrate what you're doing well. 4 would be to be consistent in your habits. One of the secrets to sticking to good habits is building off of small changes over time. And then we can go to that next slide. This is another graphic. It's powerful. You're doing, just by showing up today, you're doing the hard work. This is a part of change. You're choosing to not just slap a Band-Aid on your underlying issue. You're taking ownership of your health, and you want to use food as your medicine. So I think now's a good time. We'll go ahead and switch around, and we're going to do a couple food demonstrations. So I'm going to have to spin around here and get set up. I don't know if it's better for you to see my face or the cutting board, but I don't think you get to see both. I'll angle it down so you can kind of see what we're doing. So we're going to start with a grazing tray. And this is just a really great way to get more fruits and vegetables in your daily. This can be fun for kids, this can be fun for adults, and it also can be, an easy thing to do on the go. So we've got this muffin tin here, and we're gonna fill, this is kind of the fun way to do it for kids, but you could chop everything up and just leave it here on the cutting board for yourself, and that's often what I'll do in my own household. So we're gonna take 12 anti-inflammatory foods and just fill up these little muffin tins. So we've got some apples that we'll put in here, and then some organic berries. Like we talked about, these are filled with antioxidants. We've got raspberries and blueberries, because I love berries and we eat lots of those at our house. We've got some blueberries. And again, what's great about this is when you're home, you can just, as you walk by, walk through the kitchen to get a sip of water, or you're just walking around doing your laundry, whatever it is you're doing. We got some broccoli. Whatever it is you're doing, you'll be surprised how quickly this veggie tray, this nibble tray will disappear. And even things like, I'm going to put some organic spinach in here. You'll be surprised what you reach for when it's just sitting there, because really what ends up happening with processed foods is they're convenient. So it's easy to grab a bag of chips. It's easy to grab a granola bar. And while it's okay to do that sometimes, I've got some organic hummus here. What if we just made all these foods readily available so that we could just walk by and grab some? And sometimes we've got some walnuts here. Great for omega-3s. And then we've got some sesame seeds. Got to get some seeds in there. And this can be done, for the most part, in advance. You know, you can just cut all these things up and keep everything cut up in the fridge. Again, just eliminating the step, making it easy, making it as easy or easier. I've got some organic almond butter, making it just as easy as, like I said, walking into the kitchen and grabbing, this one's a little messy, and grabbing a bag of chips that isn't nourishing and that it doesn't have protein and fiber, the things that are going to keep you full, which is why you probably went to the kitchen in the first place, because you were hungry. So then we'll cut up a little bit of some cucumber and put those in there. And then a little bit of avocado. See how efficiently I can do this. So for protein, we've got our sesame seeds, we've got walnuts, we've got hummus, we've got, well, this is a little overripe, but you get the idea. You could knead it with a spoon, I guess. So this is your tray. All these foods, and kids love it. So if you've got a picky eater at home, or maybe you're the picky eater, this is a great way to introduce yummy, nutritious foods. And again, you walk by, you'd be surprised how long it takes for you to start grabbing spinach. If you've eaten everything else, especially, and that's what's sitting there, maybe you take a spinach leaf and you dip it in the hummus, or you know, you've got your apple for your almond butter. But these are a lot of fun. Kids love them. Like I said, you can put it in a to-go container, you know, something like this, and take it to work, or a couple little containers that just keep you from reaching for, you know, that convenient bag of Oreos, or you know, whatever other packaged foods are in, you know, your lobbies. So I'm going to put this over here. We're going to move on to another really fun one. This is probably my favorite. Well, it's my favorite sweet treat to have at the house. And I really wanted to include something that was sweet, because the reality is none of us are perfect. We're going to want something sweet every once in a while. And you don't have to feel like you blew it every time. You know, you can have and choose something that has better ingredients. Because like I was saying earlier, there's always a better option. So you can see I've already put the black beans. Whoa, I didn't tell you what we're making. We are making black bean brownie bites. And they're not as earthy tasting as they sound. I've taken them to many baby showers and bridal showers and birthday parties and not said a word about them, and they are well liked by everybody. So right now I just went ahead and took the organic black beans and rinsed them and drained them and put them in a food processor. And you're going to love this because it's so simple. There's one bowl. I'm going to put everything in here. We're going to blend it and then bake it. We've got black bean brownies. So I've got black beans. We're going to add, I already went and portioned it, but we've got some cacao powder, which is loaded with antioxidants. This is a good one to keep in your house anyway and just sprinkle on top of a smoothie, or what do we do with it? We'll put it on smoothies. We'll put it on smoothie bowls, pretty much anything that, whether it be a sweet treat or a fruit treat, we'll sprinkle it on. So I've got that with some baking powder and a little bit of real salt. I was supposed to melt this, but this is organic coconut oil. You see here. So we've got a quarter cup of organic coconut oil instead of a saturated fat like butter. We're going to scoop that in there. And then we're going to take half a cup of organic oats and dump these in here. And then we've got some organic maple syrup. We'll take half a cup of this and pour it in there. I honestly do a little less than half a cup. I like it a little less sweet. So poured it just shy of half a cup. Same with the chocolate chips. I tend to do a little bit less. I'll let the cacao powder be my chocolate. But we've got some organic chocolate chips here. And I always use dark chocolate chips, and I use I purchase high quality chocolate chips to kind of, again, well, we didn't talk about this, but sugar is one of the GMO crops, which means it's sprayed with glyphosate, which is essentially Roundup. And so to avoid that, you can either buy it non-GMO or buy it organic. So again, I kind of do less than half a cup, but I scoop a couple in. It also gives it some good texture. And then from there, we're just gonna, oh, we need vanilla. So we do 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Pour that in there. And that's it for ingredients. So we're just gonna put this lid on, and you can either chop it or puree it. I've done it both ways. When it's chopped, I'll often get asked if there's walnuts in it because the oats leave a little bit of texture, and you can always put walnuts in it again. Extra protein, get the omegas from it. So we're just gonna blend this real quick. So this would be a lot more on the chunky side, but you can see this is the batter you're working with. Looks and tastes just like brownie batter. It's great. And then I usually just take this little muffin tin. I like to use muffin tins because nobody likes cutting brownies, and I'm one of those people. So I like to just put them in muffin tins, and they pop out really easily. And because of the coconut oil, you really don't even need to spray the pan. They just slide right out. But I went ahead, and I've got some baked that I was just going to show you. This is how they turn out. So they're so delicious. You skipped all the refined carbs. They're still gooey and chocolatey, so they satisfy that sweet craving. They're like I said, the crowd always loves them. All right, so that's it for that. I'm just gonna put the lid on here, and we'll flip back around Mariel and hop back for some questions. So we have some questions that were submitted prior to the program, and I just, with our few remaining minutes, just want to run through the most popular, starting with, if I'm going to start with cutting one thing out of my diet, what would you recommend? And that's a great question. And I've tried to kind of touch on this throughout the whole, our whole time together, just that, don't get overwhelmed. It's really just one thing you're trying to start with, and then you just keep going. And keep building momentum and motivation and confidence. So if you think about the whole lifestyle changes as one big bite, that's what I was saying, it can just feel overwhelming, and taking small steps, celebrating those victories, being consistent, that all breeds confidence and will propel you forward. So we just extensively ran through a list of harmful and helpful foods that either increase or decrease inflammation, and the best thing you can swap out really is the thing that you feel ready to. That'll keep you motivated, that'll keep you excited, that'll keep you making those healthy changes. And it's not a sprint, it is a marathon. And when you give yourself that grace to slow down and to recognize that every healthy swap you make is changing your life, you free yourself up to enjoy the journey and view it as a journey and as an adventure, and to acknowledge that the change you're in pursuit of is a sustainable kind. This change doesn't have an end date, because it's not one challenge and then you're back to the way you were living. It's a whole lifestyle transformation, and that's what sets you up to live a life feeling your best. So think back to the list that I was sharing that we were walking through. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start by swapping out foods with hydrogenated oils? Do we want to start by swapping out foods with high fructose corn syrup, or reducing sugar to the American Heart Association's recommendation? Do you want to eliminate artificial sweeteners or eliminate processed foods? Because the reality is these are all equally valuable first steps, and that you'll eventually get to them all. So just ask yourself, which one do I want to start with? And go from there. And then we'll go on to the next question. They're all so good. So the next one, and I feel like this one kind of got answered throughout our time as well. It says, how long should I try an anti-inflammatory diet to see a difference? I first just want to point out that the anti-inflammatory diet is different by design from other diets that we may be familiar with. This diet is really a lifestyle change. It's not a short-term solution. The real trick is to stick with it. So unlike, pain medication where it can take just minutes to work, an anti-inflammatory diet may not produce its full effect for several days or weeks, and for some more than 6 weeks. And this is actually a helpful tool would be, knowing that sometimes the effect can be difficult to notice just because they're gradual. For some people they're not. But there is value in keeping a food journal to track any changes that you're seeing in symptoms, so you can look back and see, what's working and what's not. I'd say the answer to this question is also dependent on how fully you make your changes. Are you making, again, gradual changes, or is it an immediate thorough overhaul, and how severe are those, your symptoms? But truth is, going back to where we were earlier too, the microbiome changes really quickly, and research has shown that within 2 to 4 days of eating right, your gut microbiome can actually change. So I've had clients who notice change in as little as 10 days. I've also seen it take a couple of weeks, but I've never not seen good come from it. So I think a good reminder here is that the day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit. It takes time, but you will notice something. And then if we have time, we'll move on to the next question. So how does alcohol fit into an anti-inflammatory diet? And again, we kind of talked about this earlier. Everyone's situation is unique. Their symptoms, their type of arthritis, their frequency of consumption. It's generally advised when in pursuit of an anti-inflammatory diet to avoid alcohol, especially those with refined carbs, because reducing and eliminating alcohol intake often does decrease inflammation. So whether alcohol in moderation makes sense for your unique needs is really a great conversation to explore with your primary care provider for the best plan moving forward for you. And then last, we have, I know my main foods to avoid for my gout, but are there particular foods that can be beneficial? So this was good, and I felt like it didn't get mentioned earlier. So, not only are there foods that are beneficial, let's not forget the importance of water. It can be your best friend. And just a good rule of thumb on how much to drink is half of your body weight in ounces. And that's not something, again, small steps, doesn't have to go 0 to 100. Just kind of incrementally work that number up. But fortunately, on the food front, the same anti-inflammatory diet principles that we've been talking about have been shown to have positive outcomes in this scenario. So that's eating more fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and avoid foods and beverages with high fructose corn syrup, and cutting back on saturated fats, and focusing on lean protein, whether it be plant protein or lean meats, and then I'd say we'll end there. So these are all wonderful questions, and I know we didn't touch on everything. So if anyone has additional questions or would like additional information, you can feel free to email me, and I'll follow up after the program. So the last slide from me, I want to say, now it's your turn, and you have the power to take your health into your own hands. You have the power to manage your symptoms. You have the power to discover what it means to feel your best. So I now ask you, what's one simple change you can start today? And if you would like to, I'd love for you to write that down and even send it to me. I'd love to hear your takeaways and what really stood out as important to you and where you're headed in your health journey. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back to you, Melissa, for some closing remarks.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline. That was so much wonderful and helpful information, and I know we're all very, very appreciative. So I do see that we've had some questions come in the chat. One of them earlier on was that we are recording this, and we can certainly provide it back out to you guys. So we have most of your emails when you registered for the program, and we'll be happy to provide that. You can also reach out to us. My email is mhughey, I'll put it in the chat, but it's mhughey@arthritis.org. And you can reach out to us if you don't receive it as well. Also, in the follow-up email that we'll send to everyone, we will address all of these particular questions. Jacqueline, there's some individual questions on there about particular types of foods and things like that. So Jacqueline will answer those, and we'll provide that information back out to the group because I know it will benefit everyone. So thank you guys for chatting those in. So to kind of wrap us up today, I wanted to let everybody know the additional programs that are going to be offered later this year under our pain management series. And again, these were chosen by our arthritis warriors in the state, kind of where the top interest was. So our next one's going to be June 16th, and that is going to be on occupational therapy and assisted devices. So we're very excited to offer that one. In Q3, we will be offering one around exercise and the benefits of exercise for pain. And it will be interactive, so we will have various exercise experts in many different types that will be providing, samples, how to start, that type of thing. And then in the Q4 of the year, we will be offering a program around sleep and fatigue, because we know obviously what an issue this can be when living in pain. And Jacqueline even touched on the sleep earlier. That's such an important piece in living a healthy lifestyle. So those are the 3 pain management programs to come later this year. We'll also be offering some education in the state around mental health and chronic illness, and also a special program specifically on women's health and arthritis. And we'll have a panel of some fabulous female physicians in various areas of expertise. So be sure to be on the lookout for these future programs. So I also, when we started the program, I mentioned a little bit about our Insights program. So we'll go ahead and put that link in the chat. I encourage everyone to take a few minutes. It takes less than 10 minutes to complete online, and it's completely confidential. You're sharing your experience of living with arthritis. And why this is so important is because again, we're patient-driven organization. So the information that we receive back helps us at a local level in terms of identifying the key issues to make sure we're offering relevant education and tools and resources in our local communities, but also at the national level. It helps to shape our agenda in terms of our advocacy work and our research. So it really is an important initiative, and I encourage all of you to take a few minutes to complete that. In addition, if you're interested in getting a little more involved or getting plugged in, I encourage you to visit arthritis.org/liveyes. And again, we'll put that in the chat. And this is an introduction to our Live Yes Arthritis Network, where you can become plugged in and connected. We have so many online tools, opportunities to interact with other arthritis warriors across the country, but then also locally, because we know that connection piece is so important. And then lastly, just to stay connected and up to date with all of those programs that I mentioned, if you are on social media, I encourage you to follow us. We're on Facebook and Instagram locally and the handle is AF Florida. So that's AF Florida on Facebook and Instagram. And that'll just be an easy way to stay up to date with all of the activities that we are offering locally. And then lastly, we will be rounding out our spring in May with our annual Walk to Cure Arthritis. We do have a virtual option this year in light of the pandemic, and so you can participate from anywhere, which is a really great option, and people can join you from anywhere. So that website is walktocurearthritis.org. So I encourage you to check that out and take the first step in giving back, celebrating our arthritis warriors, and really coming together for the 54 million Americans living with arthritis. So Jacqueline, I want to thank you again on behalf of everyone on the call. So phenomenal, such great information, really tangible things that I think everyone can take and start. So thank you, thank you. And thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us and learn a little bit more. And we look forward to working with you in the coming months and year, and hope that we have the opportunity to meet in person in the future as well as things continue to improve. So thank you to everyone. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and otherwise we'll be following up with the video and the answers to your questions, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great day, everyone.